Stress. We all know what it feels like, right? From the tiny annoyance of being stuck in traffic to the really heavy weight of a long-term problem. But what's actually going on inside our heads when we feel that pressure? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dive deep into the science of how stress, both big and small, physically changes and even rewires our brain.
Okay, so we've all been there. You spill coffee on your shirt right before a big meeting, or you step in a puddle, and just like that, your entire mood is shot for hours. Why do these little daily hassles, these tiny negative moments, have such a powerful, lingering grip on us?
Well, the answer starts in a part of your brain called the amygdala. You can think of it as your brain's super-sensitive threat detector. The second it senses a threat, and I mean even a minor one, it sounds the alarm, kicking off that whole fight-or-flight response. The problem is, for a lot of us, that alarm can get kind of stuck in the on position, and it's slow to turn off, which is why that bad mood can stick around long after the coffee stain is gone.
But what happens when those little stressors just don't stop? And it's not just one bad morning, but a constant, never-ending feeling of being on high alert because of work or family stuff or just the state of the world. That's when we get into what's called chronic stress. And believe me, that weight really adds up.
Yes, scientists actually have a term for this. It's called allostatic load. It's basically the cumulative wear and tear across your entire body and your brain that comes from being stuck in that high alert state for way too long. Just imagine an alarm bell that is always, always ringing. The allostatic load is the price your body pays for that. So that constant alarm, it doesn't just wear you down emotionally. It is literally rewiring the physical connections in your brain. And one of the most important systems it messes with is the one that's supposed to be active when you're not really doing anything at all. It's called the default mode network, or DMN for short. The easiest way to think about it is as your brain's idle mode. It's what's humming along in the background when you're daydreaming, or thinking about your day, or just reflecting on your life. It's a really core system that helps shape our entire sense of self. So, yeah, it's pretty important.
Now, for this network to work properly, all these different parts of the brain have to be in sync, talking to each other, kind of like musicians in an orchestra, and they do this by communicating through these rhythmic electrical pulses we call brainwaves. But here's where it gets really fascinating. The tempo of this orchestra actually changes as we get older. In adults, the network is synchronized by faster alpha waves, but in a kid's developing brain, it's synchronized by slower theta waves.
So, this led researchers at the Feldman Lab to ask a huge question. What does chronic, real-world stress actually do to this network? To find out, they did this landmark study on pre-adolescent kids and their moms who had been exposed to years of war-related stress, and they compared their brain activity to a control group that hadn't. And wow, the results were just striking. Take a look at these heat maps with me. The really warm colors, the yellows and oranges, that's what you want to see. That shows strong, healthy connections in the default mode network. Now just look at the difference. On the left, you've got the brains exposed to chronic stress, and on the right, the control group. You can literally see the connections are weaker in the stressed groups. It's not subtle at all. So, what's the key takeaway here? It's that chronic stress isn't just a feeling. It literally disrupts your brain's ability to work as a team. It weakens the very connections that let your brain rest, reflect, and maintain a stable idea of who you are. But wait, the study found something even more specific, and frankly, pretty concerning. The damage wasn't one size fits all. In the moms, the stress messed with that adult alpha rhythm. But in their children, it disrupted the theta rhythm, and that brainwave is absolutely critical for building a healthy, mature brain. It's like shaking the foundation of a house while it's still being built.
Okay, so we've seen how stress messes with the brain's whole communication network. Now let's zoom in, really zoom in on one specific part of the brain that takes a direct hit. Because chronic stress doesn't just scramble the signals, it physically attacks a brain region that's essential for your memory and emotions.
Remember that alarm bell, the amygdala? Well, when it goes off, your body gets flooded with hormones, and the most famous one is cortisol. In short bursts, it's a lifesaver. It gives you the juice you need to deal with a threat. But when it's constantly elevated, it basically becomes toxic.
And the part of the brain that's most vulnerable to this toxic flood of cortisol is the hippocampus. Now, this area is key for learning and making memories. But, and here's the really ironic part, it's also supposed to be the off switch for the whole stress response.
So why is it so vulnerable? Well, Think of it this way. The hippocampus has way more parking spots, or receptors, for cortisol than almost any other part of the brain. So when there's a flood of cortisol, it all parks there, and it starts doing real physical damage to the brain cells. The connections literally shrink and pull back. This process is called dendritic retraction, and it's directly linked to conditions like depression and PTSD.
And this kicks off this awful, vicious cycle. Chronic stress leads to high cortisol. High cortisol damages the hippocampus. But a damaged hippocampus gets worse at its job of telling your body to stop making cortisol. So stress damages the very system that's designed to protect you from stress, which just leads to even more damage. It's a terrible feedback loop.
Okay, I know, that all sounds pretty bleak, but here's the most important part of this whole story. Your brain is not set in stone. The very same quality that allows it to be damaged by stress, its ability to change, called neuroplasticity, also allows it to be healed. And that means we can actually train our brains to cope better.
So here's the big question. Can you actively train your brain to bounce back from those daily hassles more quickly? To turn off that alarm bell sooner before the stress spills over and ruins your whole day? And the answer, thankfully, is a resounding yes.
So let's talk about your resilience toolkit. Here are 4 simple, science-backed strategies you can start using today. First up, interrupt rumination. That's when you're replaying a negative event over and over. When you notice you're doing it, break the cycle. Get up, listen to a song, call a friend, anything to switch focus. Second, meditate. And no, you don't have to be a monk. Even a few minutes of mindfulness a day can strengthen the brain networks that regulate mood. Third, broaden your view. Stress gives us tunnel vision, so consciously force yourself to zoom out and think about the good things, the big picture. And finally, a little mental time travel. Ask yourself, will this thing that's stressing me out matter in 5 hours, 5 days, 5 years? The answer is almost always a big fat no.
So remember, your brain is not fixed. It's always responding and adapting to what you do and what you think. Stress can rewire it for the worse, but you absolutely have the power to rewire it for the better. So I'll leave you with this question. Knowing your brain can change, what's one small thing you'll do today to start building that resiliency?